The dawn had not yet broken over the grand estate of Duke Selim, but Eleanor was already awake. For 7 years her routine had been absolute. She smoothed the linens, organized the ledger books, and drafted discreet trade agreements that rescued the Duke's slipping investments before his noble advisors even realized a crisis existed. Everyone in the household saw only a quiet maid with ink-stained fingers. Only Selim knew the truth. He had watched her quietly turn his failing wheat estates into the region's most profitable yield. He had sat across from her in the late hours, listening in awe to her sharp mind rewrite the duchy's economic future. Slowly, admiration had turned to devotion. 2 months ago, under the silver canopy of the garden terrace, Selim had taken her hands in his. He had pressed a soft kiss to her knuckles and promised her a life as his duchess, swearing that no tide of society could keep them apart. Tonight, under that same moon, he stood before her with his head bowed. "The king's decree is absolute, Eleanor," Selim whispered, his voice trembling as he reached for her. "The family debt is too vast. Lady Rosalind's dowry is the only thing that can save the Eastern March from total collapse. It is merely a political alliance. A piece of parchment." Eleanor stood perfectly still in her simple linen dress. "And what am I to be, Selim?" "Stay," he pleaded, taking a step closer, his eyes desperate. "Remain as the head of the household staff. Stay by my side. Let me secure the funds, fix the estate, and arrange a quiet annulment in a few years. Just wait for me. I swear I will fix everything." A tear slipped down Eleanor's cheek, but her chin remained high. Her voice did not tremble. "A woman who knows her worth never waits to become someone's second choice," she said softly. Before he could answer, she turned and walked into the night, leaving her keys on the mahogany table and stepping out of the estate forever. The ultimate betrayal has set the stage. Selim chose status and wealth over the woman who secretly built his empire, but Eleanor is about to show the entire kingdom what true ambition looks like. The coastal city of Port Oakhaven was a swirling, chaotic sea of salt air, loud fishmongers and desperate merchants. It was 300 miles from Duke Selim's estate, and for Eleanor, it was the edge of the known world. She arrived with a single worn carpet bag containing 3 changes of clothes, a map of the continental sea routes, and 7 years of small copper savings tucked into a leather pouch. Her feet were bruised, her hands calloused, but her mind was clearer than it had ever been. While other travelers rushed toward cheap taverns, Eleanor walked straight to the harbor district's neglected northern alleyway. She had studied Oakhaven's shipping logs from Selim's library years ago. She knew the northern wharf suffered from low-tide mud, making it impossible for heavy cargo ships to dock. Because of this, the surrounding land was practically worthless. She found a tiny abandoned stone bakery with a caved-in roof and an ancient brick oven. The landlord, eager to rid himself of the property, sold her the lease for a handful of coppers. Working through the night, Eleanor cleared the rubble herself, scrubbed the stone counters, and repaired the oven using clay from the shoreline. But she didn't just bake bread. She knew that sailors embarking on month-long voyages died of scurvy and spoiled rations. Using local citrus, dried oats and honey, she baked dense, long-lasting sea biscuits packed with nutrients. She walked down to the docks at sunrise, offering free samples to ship captains preparing to set sail. Within 3 weeks, captains were lining up around the block before dawn. Her tiny shop was producing 1,000 rations a day. When a sudden storm stranded 5 major merchant vessels in the bay, local suppliers panicked and spiked wheat prices by 300%. Eleanor didn't panic. She bypassed the corrupt local grain guild entirely, using her sharp mathematical mind to calculate a direct contract with inland farmers, buying their surplus directly at a fair price. By the end of her first year in Oakhaven, the small bakery had expanded into a massive warehouse. Eleanor stood on the docks watching her first custom cargo ship slide into the water, its sails painted with a simple silver crest. She had built her first trade line without noble blood, without a title, and without asking anyone for permission. Eleanor's unstoppable rise has officially begun. From a broken bakery to owning her very first merchant ship, she is proving that true power comes from intellect, grit, and vision. 10 years had passed, and the name Lady Eleanor of the Silver Empire was whispered with awe from the northern frozen ports to the southern desert markets. What had started as a single bakery in a muddy alley had transformed into an untouchable commercial juggernaut. Eleanor's silver fleet now numbered over 100 heavily armored merchant ships. She had expanded from nutrient rations into high-grade textiles, rare medicinal spices, and the continent's most reliable private banking system. Eleanor sat behind a polished obsidian desk on the top floor of her newly constructed headquarters overlooking the harbor. She wore a tailored velvet coat, her hair pinned back with modest, elegant silver pins. In front of her sat 3 of the most powerful guild masters in Oakhaven, their foreheads beaded with sweat. Lady Eleanor, the chief of the textile guild, stammered, placing a heavy velvet pouch of gold on her desk. "We are asking for a 3-month extension on our shipping loan. The winter trade routes were brutal." Eleanor didn't touch the gold. She opened a thick leather ledger, her sharp eyes scanning rows of precise calculations. "The winter routes were mild this year, Master Vance," she said calmly, her voice smooth as silk. "Your delay is not due to weather. It is because you invested 50,000 gold pieces into Duke Selim's eastern iron mines that my analysts predicted would run dry 3 months ago." The guild masters gasped. No detail of continental commerce escaped the Silver Lady. "I will not accept late gold," Eleanor declared, closing the ledger with a quiet, authoritative thud. "Instead, I will acquire 40% of your shipping docks. You will retain your titles, but your trade routes will now run under the silver banner." Cornered by her mathematical precision, the masters signed the transfer documents without another word, bowing deeply as they backed out of her office. Meanwhile, 300 miles away in the capital, Duke Selim's life was falling apart. His political marriage to Lady Rosalind had devolved into a nightmare of public arguments and ruthless extravagance. Rosalind had liquidated half the duchy's assets to fund her lavish balls, while her father's promised financial relief turned out to be buried under high-interest loans. To make matters worse, without Eleanor's quiet brilliance managing the ledger behind the scenes, Selim's agricultural ventures had completely collapsed. The grand estate was drowning in debt, and the Eastern March was on the verge of bankruptcy. Standing in his empty study, surrounded by unpaid bills, Selim stared at a small rusted key left on his desk 10 years ago. His hair was touched with gray, his face lined with regret and exhaustion. A servant knocked on the door, holding an official parchment with a broken wax seal. "My lord, the creditors have bought our final mortgages. You are summoned to the Royal Economic Summit in the capital. The supreme lender of the crown wishes to discuss your terms of foreclosure." Selim looked at the seal on the parchment, a simple, striking silver crest. "The tables have completely turned. Eleanor is now the single most powerful economic force on the continent, while the Duke's desperate choices have led his family to absolute ruin." The grand marble palace in the capital was overflowing with monarchs, foreign ambassadors, and wealthy aristocrats. Golden chandeliers illuminated the hall, casting a warm glow over silk gowns and tailored uniforms. Yet, despite the presence of royalty, every whisper in the room revolved around a single highly anticipated arrival: the mysterious founder of the Silver Empire. Duke Selim stood near the entrance, adjusting his embroidered velvet coat. The garment was threadbare at the cuffs, a subtle, embarrassing sign of his family's impending ruin. His wife, Lady Rosalind, had abandoned him months ago after her father's house declared bankruptcy, leaving Selim alone to answer for millions in accrued debt. A trumpet sounded at the grand archway, signaling the arrival of the crown's chief creditor. The heavy doors swung wide. A woman stepped into the hall, flanked by 4 royal guards and a private retinue of senior economists. She wore an exquisite dress of silver-threaded midnight silk, her posture radiating absolute authority. Royalty bowed as she passed, desperate to secure her financial favor. Selim's heart stopped. His breath hitched in his throat. The high-collared gown, the calm, piercing intellect in her eyes, the effortless grace. It was Eleanor. He took an involuntary step forward, his mind reeling. The woman standing before Kings was not an illusion, nor was she the quiet maid who had once scrubbed his marble corridors. She was the absolute ruler of the continent's commerce. Overwhelmed by a wave of shock, nostalgia, and desperation, Selim pushed past 2 foreign dignitaries and stepped into her path. "Eleanor," he gasped, his voice trembling. Is it truly you?" The royal guards immediately shifted, their hands resting on the pommels of their swords, but Eleanor raised a single slender hand to stop them. She turned her cool, measured gaze onto the Duke. "Your Grace," she said, her voice smooth, composed, and devoid of hatred. "It is Lady Eleanor here." Selim flinched at the formal title. Looking into her eyes, he felt the full, suffocating weight of his past choices. "Eleanor, please. I didn't know. The debt, the estate. I have missed your counsel every single day. I was foolish. I was forced by the court, but my heart—" "Your heart chose status, Selim," Eleanor interrupted calmly, stepping forward so only he could hear her quiet, devastating tone. "And status brought you to this floor begging for a lifeline." Selim bowed his head, tears pricking his eyes. "Save my house, Eleanor. I am on my knees. Tell me what you want. My land, my title, anything." Eleanor looked at the broken man before her, feeling neither satisfaction nor malice. She pulled a scroll from her leather portfolio and handed it to him. "This is the acquisition agreement for your duchy," she stated clearly. "I have purchased all your debt from the crown. The estate will not be destroyed and your tenant farmers will retain their land under fair wages. But the title and the governance of the Eastern March belong to the Silver Empire now." Selim stared at the document, his hands shaking as he realized she had saved his people while completely stripping him of the power he had once traded her for. "Why?" Selim whispered, looking up at her with raw remorse. "After everything I did to you, why save my land?" Eleanor smiled softly, a look of complete, unshakable peace on her face. "Because 14 years ago, I promised myself I would never let someone else's weakness dictate my worth," she replied softly. "I did not build an empire to ruin you, Selim. I built it so no one could ever make me a second choice again." She turned gracefully, her silver train sweeping across the polished marble, leaving the Duke standing alone in the crowd as she walked toward the throne room to dictate the future of the kingdom. An absolute masterclass in dignity, self-worth, and ultimate triumph. Eleanor didn't need revenge. She simply outgrew the toxicity and built a legacy that will last for generations. Her journey proves that your value is never defined by how others treat you, but by the courage you have to walk away and build your own empire. What was your favorite moment of Eleanor's legendary story? Drop your final thoughts in the comments below right now. Thank you all so much for following this incredible tale. Make sure to smash that like button, hit that subscribe button, and turn on your notification bell right now so you never miss our next brand new dramatic romance release.